New York City, 1976. Author and researcher Zecharia Sitchin publishes his book The 12th Planet, introducing his revolutionary interpretation of the Anunnaki deities. After studying Sumerian cuneiform tablets for 30 years, he asserts that these so-called Sumerian gods were, in fact, extraterrestrials that landed on Earth in Mesopotamia more than 450,000 years ago. According to Sitchin's translations, the Anunnaki both created human beings and also had a part in mankind's downfall when a great flood nearly destroyed all life on Earth. But why? What was the purpose of the Anunnaki's earthly visitations? And why did they create the creature known as man? Nick Redfern, Zecharia Sitchin wrote a number of well-received books on the Anunnaki, which he believed were basically extraterrestrial entities from a planet called Nibiru, which he quite controversially believed actually exists in our solar system. His theory was they upgraded the human race and used them as sort of a slave species. Sitchin understood, based on his interpretation of the tablets, the mission had to do with the failing atmosphere around the planet Nibiru and that when they came to mine gold. Jason Martell, the Anunnaki had damaged their atmosphere, and by using gold, they found that they could patch these atmospheric holes. This becomes the story of our humanity. The Anunnaki literally came to Earth to mine the gold, and when realizing it was such a toil to do so, created us as a worker race to do that for them. Narrator, Zecharia Sitchin's hypothesis that the Anunnaki came to work to mine gold and then created humans to perform the task was both bold and controversial. Needless to say, it was not embraced by mainstream scholars. But many ancient astronaut theorists believe that Sitchin's interpretation of the tablets is not only correct but also provides compelling evidence that the Anunnaki created mankind. Linda Moulton Howe, what if the whole Anunnaki story is a global story of a non-human intelligence that was manipulating genes all over the planet? That it wasn't just gold, but it was a planetary base. William Henry, the Anunnaki said that they came from Nibiru, and they believed that Nibiru is a star, a gate, and a crossing place, opening up the possibility that the Anunnaki are actually traveling the stars through stargates and wormholes. Northern Iraq, along the east bank of the Tigris River, opposite the city of Mosul, lies the ruins of the ancient city of Nineveh, a place originally inhabited by the Sumerians of Mesopotamia. Here in 1842, British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard unearthed the ruins of the Great Library of Ashurbanipal, a royal archive containing thousands of clay tablets with cuneiform inscriptions. Dating to 3000 BC, the messages carved into stone are considered to be the world's first written accounts. Sumerian tablets are probably one of the oldest forms of a written record that we have. They have been translated, and they tell exciting stories about how gods intermingled with human beings and actually had a hand in the creation of human beings. Whether or not it's just mythology or if it's fact, no one really knows. Narrator, according to interpretations of the Sumerian tablets, the gods were called the Anunnaki. What we're looking at here is a Sumerian tablet that actually shows the tree of life flanked by divine beings. You can see here the Anunnaki on each side. We also see the winged disc, a symbolic reference that the Anunnaki had the power of flight. They actually had necklaces with astronomical references, a moon, a star, various symbols, which even could be symbolized as a wristwatch, technology being used 6,000 years ago. The written accounts etched into stone suggest the Anunnaki were giant beings standing 8 feet tall who came to Earth in search of gold for their home planet. Jason Martell, when the Sumerian gods, the Anunnaki, realized the toll it was taking to mine the gold themselves, they decided to fashion a worker being, a slave to mine the gold for them. And they explain in the Sumerian creation tales that this was an arduous process. So it's very possible that our genetic evolution was a process done by the Anunnaki to create us in their image and after their likeness. They created man according to the Sumerian text. They created Adam and Eve. How interesting that the Bible will echo the story but talk about it in terms of God. Nick Redfern, it's almost like these highly advanced creatures were acting as teachers. And certainly, Sumerian culture and mythology is full of stories of receiving visitations from these mysterious higher entities that, bestowed wisdom and fantastic ideas and concepts. And you have to wonder, is this just down to myth? Or was somebody coming down and really trying to give us a push, if you like? Narrator, ancient chronicles of sky beings creating human life are common in early cultures found all over the world. But while mainstream scholars often dismiss this evidence, might such tangible historical accounts provide proof of alien intervention in man's evolution, as ancient astronaut theorists believe? The Sumerians are not the only culture that talks about this. Also, in the Quran, it says that language was given to us by Allah or God. The Maya Popol Vuh says that language was given to us by the gods. The ancient Egyptian texts are saying the exact same thing. It doesn't matter what ancient culture we look at, they all say the same, that language was a gift from the gods. We should finally come to grips with the idea that extraterrestrials had something to do with our development. Prior to the use of early systems of writing, ancient people carved symbolic communication into stone, called petroglyphs. The oldest date to about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. According to ancient astronaut theorists, petroglyphs located in the American Southwest link the prehistoric ancestors of the Zuni and Hopi tribes with star beings. Interpreter, the first graphic expressions by humans were petroglyphs. That means symbols or figures scratched into stones. The Hopi Indians, for example, scratched petroglyphs into their rock faces that show people with radiating wreaths, gods that descend from the sky. The Hopi Indians say that these beings are Kachinas, beings from space who came to Earth in aircraft who are not gods but who brought them knowledge from another planet. We have the same phenomenon in Europe in Val Camonica. We have it in Asia. We have it in Brazil. When we look at the fact that all around the world, we hear similar legends of people from the stars coming down and having a profound impact on the people of this country or that particular culture, all in broadly similar time frames, we're seeing a pattern developing. And it's difficult to dismiss that that pattern is suggestive of our ancient past. Creatures came down and interacted with us and maybe manipulated us to become the people we are today. The Lascaux Caves, southwestern France. Discovered in 1940 near the village of Montagnac, this cave complex is covered in Paleolithic paintings dating back more than 17,000 years. Anthropologists believe ancient shamans used these subterranean chambers to perform sacred rituals. And curiously, among the many Ice Age animals that are depicted on the walls, there is a strange creature that has the body of a man and the head of a bird. The technical term for such a creature is a therianthrope. And that's from the Greek therion, which means wild beast, and anthropos, which means man. Clearly, these were not things that one encounters in everyday life. The imagery of cave art is best explained as the experiences that shamans undergo in a deep state of trance. When they return from the trance state, they then depict on the cave walls the visions that they have seen in this deeply altered state of consciousness. Narrator, the Birdman found in Lascaux is reminiscent of one of the Egyptians' most important gods, Thoth. It is also consistent with the depiction of the Sumerian sky gods, the Anunnaki. But is it mere coincidence that these shamans are encountering the same types of beings while in a trance that the world's earliest civilizations depicted as their gods? David Wilcock, voiceover in all of these different indigenous cultures around the world, there are remarkable similarities of what types of beings people claim to be meeting when they go out of body. This suggests that in the dream plane and in the shamanic state, there is, in fact, a real place that we are going and real beings that we are encountering when we get there. This is where the ancient astronaut theory suggests that they were the same teachers, the teachers that went to all the ancient cultures and brought them the basics for what we've accomplished today. But there was a big noticeable change in human behavior around 40,000 years ago, exactly at the time that our ancestors began to manifest the first amazing cave art. What is clear is that it is not a coincidence that at the moment cave art begins, we also witness, in the archaeological record, a radical change in human behavior. Nineveh, Iraq, 1849. A treasure trove of ancient cuneiform texts is uncovered, detailing accounts of the creation of earth, man, and the lives of the gods. Robert Mullins, in 1849, Austin Henry Layard made an archaeological expedition to the city of Nineveh, a city that's mentioned in the Bible. And in his excavations, he discovered the palace of Sennacherib, who is well known from the Bible. This really galvanized interest in the world. 3 years after this, his assistant found the palace of his grandson, Ashurbanipal, on the opposite side of the mound. In both cases, they found archives. Together, the archives form about 20,000 to 30,000 tablets. Narrator, recorded on 7 of the tablets, is the Babylonian creation myth called the Enuma Elish. The Enuma Elish was probably composed in the 11th century BC, but almost certainly, the story goes back to much earlier periods. The tablets tell of a god named Marduk, who took blood from the god Kingu and mixed it with clay in order to create the Earth's first humans. Eric Polterock, the Anunnaki, created the model man. That person gets picked up as a story in the Bible, and he's called Adam. What I find interesting is that the Bible left out some of the most important details and cut the story short. So the Sumerian tablets, the Mesopotamian tablets, have the more detailed versions. Narrator, according to mainstream scholars, the Enuma Elish is simply an example of an ancient creation myth. But ancient astronaut theorists believe that the epic story is not fiction but based on fact. Eric Polterock, Anunnaki is a term that means from heaven to earth they came. So the knowledge that came out from Nineveh provides a complete look at a civilization that seemingly sprung up out of nowhere. Jason Martell, many of the tablets that were unearthed in Nineveh describe nuances into the actual mindset of the gods, these Anunnaki, and they describe them as flesh and blood beings, just like us. Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, the Anunnaki themselves were physical beings that came here in giant spaceships that our ancestors thought were some type of divine apparitions. Our ancestors, especially the Sumerians, received help, and that help came from nowhere else but up there. Narrator, according to ancient astronaut theorists, the Enuma Elish vividly describes not mythic gods but otherworldly beings, alien visitors who possessed a highly advanced knowledge of genetics. M.J. Evans, the Anunnaki began to figure out how they could create a docile worker. So they took genes from a female hominid, and after many, many trials, they figured out that they could blend genes together and create the perfect being. In a sense, what these tablets are really talking about is genetic engineering and the altering of human DNA. Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, clearly, something happened where we went from nothing to all of a sudden coming up with the most incredible thought models. So the question then is, how was it done? According to the ancient astronaut theory, our ancestors were given intelligence by a deliberate change in our DNA by space travelers who came here thousands of years ago.